Israel is a land of immigration, of aliyah. Of the 2.5 million population, almost 50% arrived in the country after the re-establishment of the Jewish state. The vast majority of people in this rapidly expanding society are, or were at one time, newcomers. Some saw in Israel a place of refuge, and some a dream come true. Some came as the fulfillment of a heritage, some in search of something they knew not what, and some came with a mission. Today, it is difficult to tell them apart. Hebrew is a language spoken with a marked variety of accents. Only an occasional phrase in a foreign tongue, English, for example, reveals that this particular Israeli hails from London, from Philadelphia, from Cape Town, or from Montreal. Every second person that you meet at one time or another packed up house and home overseas, arrived at Haifa or at Lydda, sought lodgings, learned the language, filled in forms, and became a new member of a new society.
This is the first glimpse you get of Israel if you come in by air. It's Lydda Airport, where I work. I came there from London 6 years ago. For the first 3 years, I was what's called a temporary resident.
The Israel government are very understanding. They let foreigners come here on what they call a temporary residence permit for a maximum of 3 years, which means you keep your foreign passport, you're entitled to work and pay taxes, you don't have to go in the army, and you can't vote. This is supposed to be a sort of running-in period to see whether you like the country and are going to stay, or you don't like it and you're not going to stay. When my temporary residence expired, I became an Israeli citizen. Neither the British nor the Israelis have any objection to a person holding 2 passports. So I hold an Israeli passport and a British passport. I came over 10 years ago because I was looking for something to do when I came out of the army. I came on the Shirut in 1956. Shirut was a scheme to get young people between the ages of roughly 18 and 30, and trying to get them to Israel to get a year on a kibbutz, learn the language. I had a wonderful year, but although a year in kibbutz is a very nice thing, the kibbutz wasn't really for me. So I went back to England, and I thought, well, now I've got a stepping stone back into Israel. For 2 years, the idea had been germinating that I'm coming back to Israel, without a very clear idea of what I was coming back to. When I found what I came back to, I didn't like it. Alone, no friends, virtually no money. I had a job to come to. I also fixed up through the agency in London a place at Betrodetsky, a hostel for immigrants or temporary residents, somewhere to stay until they find their own flat or make their own arrangements. Single and double rooms, fair size, nicely furnished, every room in its own shower and little cooking corner. There's a restaurant downstairs where you can get a subsidized meal. And the advantage of a place like that is when you come over and don't know anybody, you meet people. In fact, quite a few of the friends I still have are the people I originally knew from Betrodetsky. I work for El Al in Flight Operations Department. Control of the flights, follow-up of hitches along the route, replanning, briefing the crews, and general coordination. And I work for El Al in the traffic department in London at the airport, passenger handling, ticketing, freight, baggage. Then I came over here and for the first 9 months did the same thing. And then they opened this course, it was 3 months full-time at the El Al school. And I've been doing the job ever since, about 5 years.
You're over the coast, you're descending, you're at flight level 4, 5, and you're straight into the runway. Thank you.
With the ships and nights and all the rest of it, my net salary is always more than my basic gross salary. I know a lot of people live on less, but if I had to live on my net salary without the overtime, I don't know how I'd do it. I can run a car, run a flat, and these are the things that a bachelor does. I have a rented apartment, 3 rooms, which I share with another English fellow, fully furnished, telephone. We've been there 3 years now. At the beginning, like everyone else that comes to Tel Aviv, I hated it. It's brash, it's noisy, it's everything you don't like. But it grows on me slowly. I like town life. I like the theatre. Hearing Hebrew on the stage still grates on my ear. It takes me about a quarter of an hour, but after that I sort of seem to forget it's in Hebrew and just sit back and enjoy the play. I think you've got as good a selection of films as you have in London. I've got a car so I can run around when I like and where I like. I'm here for good. It took me 5 years to come to this decision. I wouldn't consider living anywhere else. I don't know what it is. It's just this friendly feeling of, as far as I'm concerned, when I get off the airplane at Lille Airport, I know I'm home.
Making a home for himself in a new country is something that every newcomer does in his own particular way. For some, the job and the way of life are almost the same as they were overseas, only the surroundings have changed. But for others, Israel means a way of life they have never known before. Setting up house on a communal farming settlement, or kibbutz, is quite a change for someone brought up in a big city in the United States.
For me, home is here in Kfar Blum. I came here 3 years ago from the United States, and this year I'll be having my second baby here in the kibbutz. It's a kibbutz that was established approximately 20-25 years ago. In Kfar Blum there are approximately 700 people. Kfar Blum is situated in a valley. It has Syria on one side. It's very fertile land. The Jordan River runs through the valley. And if you go on top of the mountains and look down, you see patchwork of farmland. Very green, very beautiful. I grew up in the movement in Habonim, and always with the idea of coming to Israel. So when I finished high school, I went on a program which Habonim has called the Workshop, to live in Israel in a kibbutz for the year. And after I was here for the year, I decided that I wanted to live here. I guess you could say the kibbutz is a collective agricultural community in which a socialist way of life is carried out from the collective effort of the community. You get certain budgets, budget for clothing and toothpaste and toothbrush. And besides that, you get allowance for vacation every year and for traveling. Medical needs, certainly. All of your needs are taken care of, and you get pocket money besides. Everybody eats breakfast and lunch in the dining room. Dinner, however, is another matter. There are many families that take their eggs and whatever they want home and make dinner at home. The dining room today has a much less social function than it did have at one time. Because now we have a gymnasium, we have tennis courts, people can go play tennis, they can go to the gym at night. We have a coffee lounge, get coffee and tea, cookies and crackers and all kinds of magazine things to read. We also have concerts in a nearby kibbutz called Daphne. The kibbutz life is busy and full. Children sleep in the children's houses. In Kfar Blum, the children eat only breakfast and lunch in the children's house, and dinner they eat with their parents. They go home at 4 o'clock. From then on, they're with their parents. The parents put them to sleep in the children's house. Their classroom is there also. They learn there. They eat there. They get their clothes there. Their beds are there. Everything, their whole life functions around the children's house. My job is to make sure that kids are clothed and their clothes are ironed and they are fed and they look clean. And I simply take care of them, do the household duties that a mother would do in a private household. The kibbutz is going forward, and the standard of living is rising in the kibbutzes anywhere in Israel. And certain strict ways of living are being relaxed as the times are going forward. The children are more free, and if they want to sleep at home one night with their parents, they sleep home, and nobody raises a fuss. In many different little ways, you see the kibbutz is going forward. My mother-in-law was from Canada, and my father-in-law was from Philadelphia. They met in the movement. In those days in Palestine, the men came first to prepare the land because it was swampland here. There was malaria. So they got a few structures set up. They came here. There was nothing, of course. They built everything. They lived in tents here for 5 years. The women came with the children later, and then they began to build and build. My father was here with the Jewish brigade with Ben-Gurion and Jabotinsky and the rest of them. And my mother was here in the 30s on a visit. They also have Israel in their bones. I came to Israel twice. Started to get married to my husband, whom I met when I was here for the year. And when I finished the university, I came back and we got married. And here I am.
Israel's long history of agricultural settlement is one which has always been dependent on technical and scientific knowledge. Many of today's newcomers are to be found in the research institutions which serve modern agriculture and industry.
Well, this is a far cry from the kibbutz. We're now in Rehovot at the Weizmann Institute. I'm a Canadian. I came here from Canada in 1961. I'm a biochemist. I work here now in the Department of Biodynamics and Reproduction Research. Much of my impression of Israel before coming here had been based partly on my own observations, however misleading they may have been, and on what I had heard and read. All the bulletins the Jewish Agency sent out, the occasional issue of the Jerusalem Post, particularly having been here in the kibbutz in '52. I was 19 at the time, but it left a favorable impression in my mind, and when I returned to Canada, I went back to school and continually thought about coming back to Israel, and I finally did. I came immediately after obtaining my doctorate in biochemistry at the University of Toronto. 2 years before I finished, a friend of mine who was working here in this department at the time said, "Why don't you come here? We'd like to have a biochemist, and there's an opening." So I wrote to Professor Schlesniak, and Professor Schlesniak said, "Yes, we have an opening. We would prefer if you could bring your own money." And eventually I got a fellowship from the Population Council and came here and started working, and after that I stayed on as a staff member. The field is, in general, reproduction, biology of reproduction. And at the time that I left Canada, there were no laboratories engaged in this type of work, as far as I know. On comparison with what friends of mine are earning in the United States or in Canada, my standard of living has suffered in coming here. My major lack is space, a larger apartment or house. We have a 3-room apartment, that is 2 bedrooms. And we have 2 children who sleep in the same bedroom, and we would prefer to separate them, but we don't have this possibility. I put approximately 3,000 pounds of my money into the down payment on my apartment, and this was out of savings. I got a loan from the Jewish Agency and from Canada-Israel Developments. And in addition, I got assistance from my parents in paying off this loan quickly. Since then, we haven't saved anything other than what we are compelled to save as contributions to pension fund. Of course, in America or Canada, everyone takes out a mortgage when they buy a house. But this is the only obligation people usually go into. I was brought up, of course, that you better be without until you've saved up the money for it than to be in debt to someone else. But in Israel, I've learned that no one lives this way. You simply can't. If you are in debt, then you find the means to make the payments, but you can't save up for it in advance. Rehovot is a small town. Our social life really doesn't depend on anything that Rehovot has to offer other than the cinema. We have a circle of friends within Rehovot and some in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa. So much of our social life involves simply visiting friends or having them come to visit us. Of course, the one bright spot of the social life in Rehovot is the Wix Auditorium, the chamber music series, or the Jerusalem Chamber Orchestra, which comes here frequently. It's the little things that make the difference.
The little extras, the luxuries of the affluent societies, are for Israel a thing of tomorrow. and every newcomer learns to take this in his stride. For many, it is the very vitality and newness of the country which compares favorably with what they left behind.
Well, from my point of view, Israel has made a difference to me and my work. I'm a medical practitioner. I came to Israel 4 years ago from Bradford in the north of England. I'd been in general practice in England 9 years, and after a few years, what does one find? One suddenly looks round and sees that one's work lacks something. It lacks bites and it lacks objective. I couldn't progress any further. The practitioner was hamstringed by the lack of facilities. One of the things I asked when I came here was had they laboratory and radiological facilities available for the general practitioner. And this they have. So this gives me a greater sense of achievement in my work, because I'm not just a sorting clerk. In England the thing was different. I was able to give my wife and children economically whatever they required. What couldn't I give them at that time? Well, I couldn't give them sunshine. English winters are pretty bad, but English summers are even worse. And I felt I couldn't go on living under those conditions much longer. There's also the question of the Jewish upbringing of the children. I felt that to give them the type of Jewish background that I wanted them to have would not be possible. I suppose as a child I'd always felt a bit out of it at Christmas. It didn't really belong to me and so forth. I don't say that coming to Israel has solved all these problems, but on the other hand, it doesn't matter because the children live a free life. They speak Hebrew very well now, much better than I do. They learn the secular studies and the religious studies at school. They run in and out, and the kids next door come in and out here. They have a youth club up at the top here, which has just been opened, and there's always something doing for them. I don't know what they're doing half the time, I must admit. But I don't worry like I think I probably would have done in England. Where are you going and who are you going with?
For me too. It's just thinking about the children that decided us to make the move. I have 3 children. Chaim, who is 8, Jill is 7, my little girl Adina, who is almost 5. She's going to a kindergarten. They learn to draw and to sing and mix with other children, but they seem to really enjoy the different holidays here. There's always a party when it comes to Hanukkah or the New Year, and they take a great interest in this and seem to live it. And one of the things that make me feel I'm glad I've come is at these times. In Israel, children start school at 6 instead of 5, so we more or less had a year for Chaim to settle before he started the main school. Although we spoke English at home, of course, he began to pick up Hebrew at the kindergarten. And then, after a while, the 2 boys started speaking Hebrew together. There is this first grade school here where I'm living. My eldest is in the 2nd class and my youngest in the 1st. Both boys are near the top of each class, so the fact that they were born in another country and that they might have had problems has not affected them at all.
This is a residential area on the outskirts of Tel Aviv, which was originally settled about 15 years ago. All the houses in this area are bungalows, and all are surrounded by gardens. There are various sizes, and they run from quite a large bungalow on the one hand, which contains 4.5 rooms, which is considered large in Israel, to the semi-detached style, which contains 3 rooms. This may seem not enough to an English or to an American family. Certainly it seemed very little to us at the time, especially when we considered the price. But with the climate being what it is, rooms serve a double purpose and one lives a certain amount of the time outside. So that the relative smallness of the accommodation isn't such a problem.
There is domestic help if you want it. I have somebody twice a week. I haven't as much help as I had in England, but then my house was bigger. Here it's easy to run, And it's very simple to clean the floors. You don't have to go on your knees and scrub them. I find I can run it with much less domestic work. I do my main shopping in Tel Aviv. I go into the main supermarket once a week and I have the goods delivered. And I get everything, all my shopping done in 1 hour, and then they deliver it and it's there. I'm always interested to try new dishes. It's no use having hot roast beef and Yorkshire pudding on a summer's day here. And it's no use saying, oh dear, why can't I get McFarlane Lang's biscuits here? Because there are other things. There are mangoes and peaches and strawberries for a long season. And so I change my routine to salads at lunchtime and sometimes have a warmer meal at night in the summer.
What does one miss economically? One misses the ability to do what one likes with one's money. School education, for example. The Jewish Agency tells us that primary education is free. Well, it might not be frightfully expensive, but it certainly isn't free. The question of paying taxation on a car. There are taxes that no British Chancellor of Exchequer has even thought of yet.
Pretzels just gone up by a third in price. 2 years ago they slapped a property tax on car owners for the privilege of owning a car. It works out about £100 a year. Insurance about £400 a year. On the annual license and test, about 150, which has just gone up again. I reckon it costs about an eighth of my monthly salary, over 100 a month before you start driving it.
There's a great deal of running around that one has to do here. I went to the licensing office at 7:30 in the morning. My car had passed its test within 15 minutes of that time. I didn't get out of there till 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
You're certainly involved in more red tape, running around to the various government offices and Jewish agency offices. One ought to be rather fair about that. If one was a newcomer in England, I think one would be faced with also the same amount of red tape and regulations and reporting to the aliens office and is your passport in order and this sort of thing. But here immediately you come in and you're a foreigner, even though you don't feel you're a foreigner. You have to face making declarations at the customs, and where is the customs? Well, now it's in Tel Aviv, but that's how it was in Jaffa. And one had to run right across to Jaffa and stand in a big queue, not understanding exactly what you're supposed to be doing and why, and fill in these forms and so forth. And they say it's 12 o'clock, come back tomorrow, and these things drive you up the wall. I came back several times from several offices of both the government and Jewish agency and just went on the bed and screamed until my wife came and calmed me down. I have discovered the answer to that. It's only too late. You send your wife, she comes back with the whole mission accomplished in 10 minutes and says it was very easy, what you're making a fuss about.
One thing that you have here that compares favorably with the situation in the States is the sick funds. They're like the Blue Cross, except you get complete coverage for a monthly payment. It contributes considerably to one's sense of security, since you have all your medical treatments, hospitalization, prescriptions are covered.
Without the language, you're lost. You can't even go in and buy a packet of cigarettes properly.
I first went to a residential Alpan, where my children were taken care of during the day whilst we learned Hebrew, which is certainly enough with the problem of the language and the difference in the social and economic circumstances in the country without having to cope with the question of looking for work.
I actually started learning Hebrew just 4 years ago when I opened up my own business and I had no alternative.
Accommodation for new immigrants is available through the Jewish Agency, where a mortgage is now available for a longer period of time under better circumstances. It should be borne in mind that the question of housing under the auspices of the Jewish Agency does depend on where the Jewish Agency has accommodation. On the other hand, if somebody is coming for a trial period, he doesn't want to have to buy a flat. He will only want to rent for a while, and this is only available under private means.
Getting a flat is a nightmare. You're limited by price. First of all, they don't want to let it to bachelors. especially two bachelors together. The next thing is they come along and say, well, we want a guarantee, promissory notes to the sum of anything from 10,000 upwards. And, of course, you have to get someone to sign these things. Now, if you're new in the country, who the hell do you know is going to guarantee you for 10,000, 20,000, whatever it is?
For every new arrival, there are problems of adjustment. For Israel is a society in the making. Wittingly or unwittingly, every newcomer makes his own particular contribution to the many-sided personality of Israel today.
Here in Jerusalem, one can really take the lid off the Israeli melting pot. I myself, a social group worker, originally came from the United States about 4 years ago.
You have here a country of mass immigration. People from many different cultures have come into the country. There are many of the problems similar to what took place in the United States 50 and 60 years ago. The breakdown of the family unit in the face of the new culture, the youth being ashamed of their immigrant parents, trying to become more Israeli than the Israeli as they try to become more American than the American, looking for new values in general conflict of culture. I think it's very similar to what went on in the States. I studied at the University of Pennsylvania, where I got my BA in sociology and languages, and then I went to the Columbia University School of Social Work in New York, and then I came to Israel. I had gotten in touch with PATWA. PATWA is an organization of the Jewish Agency to help professionals settle in Israel. I knew Hebrew fairly fluently because I had studied at a Hebrew high school. I continued while I was at university at a Hebrew college as well, so this was not a problem. I started to work after about a month and a half of looking. I'd had a number of offers, but I decided to work with the municipality. The group I'm working with now is about 90% children who came originally from Iraq. There are one or two Moroccans, one or two Ashkenazim. The majority of them come from a slum area, crowded housing conditions, no play facilities of any kind, broken families or families with many children, and all of these kids have gotten into some kind of trouble with the law. They've organized themselves into a group. They have a name for themselves. They spend most of their free time together. The gang work consists of meeting every evening with a group of teenagers. We're meeting outside, in part standing around discussing, talking about all kinds of topics, occasionally going to a film, occasionally having a campfire. The university has a BA program in social work, a 3-year course. I'm working there part-time teaching an introductory course to social work once a week, plus serving as student advisor for about 10, 15 first-year students. I'm also working with the head of the social group work department on programming for social group work teaching. The other job is at a hospital for orthopedically handicapped, mainly polio cases. Many of them are in the institution because for various social reasons the family can't keep them at home, the family doesn't want them at home. There are too many children for the family to take care of, and therefore they quite often are cut off from any connection with the parents. I've sublet an apartment with a friend of mine. The people who own the apartment are abroad working for a year. It's a 2.5-room apartment with central heating. As far as apartments go in Jerusalem, most of the new housing has central heating. Most of the older housing does not. Naturally, houses with central heating are more expensive than houses without, but the winter in Jerusalem gets pretty severe. I find generally that most of my social life centers around weekends because by the time I get through work, it's between 9 and 10 o'clock at night. As in most of Jerusalem, most of social life is visiting friends. Telephones are very expensive in Israel. People don't have telephones. Therefore, if one wants to visit, one has to take the chance and go visit. There are many more opportunities in Israel for a beginning social worker than there would be in the States. Services are younger, less developed, but there are many, many opportunities to move ahead, to advance, to do interesting work. There is a feeling that one is contributing to the building of the country, to trying to make some impact on what is happening as far as changes in the society here, influencing the shape of the society. Most of the people who go into social work in Israel are doing so out of some kind of dedication, idealism, because financially they're certainly not going into it to make a fortune.
Playing one's part in the shaping of this new society does mean in many cases a foregoing of some material gains. But for the majority, the challenge of what the government planners term the development areas is something to be met with a smile.
What we're now looking at is the newest part of Kiryat Gat, a development town on the edge of the desert where I set up home almost 6 years ago. After paying my fare for me and my wife, I had the grand total of £14 in my pocket. 3 days after I was in the country, I found myself a job already, started working in Jerusalem. In the meantime, I looked for something else. I heard about the sugar factory getting built in Kiryat Gat, and I started off working there. I managed to work myself up from about £250 a month until about 1,000 in about 2 years. And besides that, I got my hand into instrumentation of the factory, and I really learned a lot. In South Africa, I started off as a fitter and turner. And halfway during my apprenticeship, I turned myself into a tool and die maker at the same firm. All the time that I was working in this place, I was still studying. And I decided to open up my own workshop. I'm doing everything. I can build you from a pin to an anchor, and I can repair you from a tram to a battleship. We haven't got any general line. One of my biggest clients are the bakery. In this bakery, I keep the whole place. All maintenance and new machinery, etc. Incidentally, I've also managed to make a lot of automation in there, slowly but surely. Most of the things are run automatic already. The place is geared at the moment for around about 10,000 loaves of bread a day. And within the next year, it will be geared for around about 18,000 loaves of bread a day. I just built them a new oven now for making pitot. And there again I managed to put in a little bit of automation as much as possible. Pita is a round flat bread which is hollow in the middle. The actual dough when they make it is very, very moist, and it's not allowed to stand for very long. It's put into an oven at around about 700 or 800 degrees centigrade for approximately 3 to 4 minutes. Because of this terrific heat, the moist turns into steam and puffs up and leaves this hollow in the center. When I came in 1960, the town was still small. Everybody knew everybody else. There were exactly 3 cars in Kiryat Gat. In those days, for a person to have a car was something really special. Today, there are the cinemas. We've got the banks in Kiryat Gat, building a new hotel, and they're putting in a new supermarket. We've got 2 petrol stations with a 3rd one building. We've got the dentists here and the private doctors here. These things weren't here 4 years ago. They weren't here 2 years ago. I've got a very small place here because I'm stubborn. I don't want to pay rent. I want to buy a place and put down money on the table and say that it's mine. But if everything goes right within the next year or 2 years, I will be able to build myself a house in Kiryat Gat. If I was still staying in South Africa, I must probably be working in my trade. Must probably have my car and maybe a little house. But I think that's about where it would stop. I don't think I would have had the chance that I've got over here of being on my own. I'm very, very interested in opening up an amusement center in Kiryat Gat. I have been promised the ground within the next month or 2 months. We shall have a bowling alley here. I want to put in a miniature golf course. and a big open-air dance floor. These things we haven't got yet.
In Israel, you've got somebody behind you. If you want to start up something, they give you loans. You've got a much better chance over here of doing something. Kiryat Gat itself is very young. As far as industry is concerned, we've got the new Pulgut knitting factories, which employ around about 1,000 people. And we've got the fine cotton spinning mills over here, which is also rather large. We've got the largest sugar factory over here, which produces the sugar from sugar beet. Kiryat Gat will one day be something.
The people who took part in this film all came from the English-speaking countries. Geoffrey Petruk arrived here from London in 1960. Ruth Ann Sadeh came in 1964 from Philadelphia. George Marcus from Canada came in 1961. Barnard and Hilary Gatoff arrived in 1962 from England. Zalman Gordon came from the United States in 1962, and Ivan Beckman from South Africa arrived in 1960. After their first few years' stay in the country, they have all already ceased to look upon themselves as newcomers.